And now we actually come to more or less the final of this second webinar, which is our colleague from the Philippines, Kelvin de las Reyes. He would like to share with us a short summary of this webinar, and I think even more importantly, the learnings we can take home from this. So please, Kelvin, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. I am honored to serve as a rapporteur and will try my best to summarize and share my personal learnings in today's session. Just for everyone's information, my level of stress is somehow in the border of toxic, but I'm grateful for the tolerable stress because of the support I'm gaining from everyone. So the webinar session 2 is entitled Reaching Out to Vulnerable Pregnant Women and Their Partners Preventing Early Life Stress. And we have multiple presentations from Peru, Afghanistan, Lao PDR, and of course our keynote speaker. But let me start off with defining what vulnerability is. It is a diminished capacity of an individual or group to participate, cope with, resist, and recover from the impact of hazards. And vulnerability, as presented and mentioned earlier, can also arise from people who are isolated, marginalized, underserved, and it could be in terms of age, gender, migration, race, and disability. Vulnerable women could be those with social adversity, mental illness, addiction, experiencing domestic abuse or violence, and high levels of stress. And more so for mothers to be or newly delivered women. And with that, there's an impact on her capacity of parenting with long-term consequences for their children. This is due primarily to the fact that pregnancy and postnatal period are sensitive developmental periods. In the keynote speech, we were able to see the general concepts of stress and impact of stress on fetal development. And it was also emphasized that there's an inextricable link between maternal, perinatal, and early childhood factors and the risk of developing heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, and many other non-communicable diseases in later life. And toxic early life stress derails development, health, and well-being and is lifelong. But the good thing is, we do have connection which supports resilience, development, health, and well-being, and is also lifelong. And we thrive to survive. The keynote speaker was also able to emphasize the different kinds of stress. On the positive stress, which promotes, which could be good, tolerable stress, and also toxic stress. And once there's a prolonged activation of stress, could have harmful effects to the child or even to the individual. And we learned also there's in terms of brain development, we should know that it has an effect on the hierarchical structural foundation and also stress alters brain development. Prolonged activation of stress system and in the absence of protective relationship is what stress what make when stress is actually toxic. There you go. It is important to note that there are means or ways to actually address this type of stress, no, and what we could actually do and how we could actually start. And I actually read through Connect to Grow recently, and we learned that the goal of Connect to Grow is that pregnant women and their partners in vulnerable positions start investing during pregnancy in building a bond with the child and thinking about what it will be like after birth and during the first 1,000 days of a child's life, and the brain develops very quickly. And during this period, there's a lifelong sensitivity to stress and is also determined, and the child learns important skills, no, in the process. And it is very important to promote strong parent-child relationship. It's crucial for the development there. One thing that I wanted to share, one thing that I really learned is that from this presentation, from the keynote speaker, we learned that people, not programs, change people. And let me zoom into how maternal and child health handbook could actually be instrumental when it comes to this. No, similarly, the MCH handbook is one of the tools in ensuring that mothers and their children, receive support accordingly, appropriate to their needs. No, as a home-based recording and health education tool for mothers and their baby. It serves not only as a link no, for mothers to MCH services, but also as a link between mothers and their child, because they are aware of their child's health and also their health, no? And it can increase knowledge and change MCH related behaviors through strengthening communication between health professional and mothers with their children. Also, in today's presentation, we learned and we're happy that there are efforts with regards to the MCH handbook in Peru, Afghanistan, and Lao PDR. Our presenter showed that the MCH handbook is being implemented and scaled up in their respective countries. And even in Afghanistan, it is emphasized that the MCH handbook is used in the continuity of care and universal health care. In Lao PDR, there are promising plans in scaling up the MCH handbook. And we learned also, more importantly, the combination of top-down and bottom-up approaches in terms of implementing the MCH handbook. I To end, I want to emphasize earlier what her Imperial Highness Akishino have mentioned. No, the MCH handbook role is more significant during this pandemic. The social and economic impact of COVID-19 on maternal health is marked. A high frequency of maternal mental health problems, such as clinically relevant anxiety and depression, and at times domestic violence is also spiking, and working mothers struggle with increased childcare demands. No, and what the MCH handbook could do is to foster care among mothers and their children, and hopefully during this very vulnerable situations, we will be able to continue taking care of our mothers and children globally. And with that, I want to, there is promise with the MCH handbook endeavors in Peru, Afghanistan, and Lao PDR, and something that most of us could learn and emulate. And also from the presentation of our keynote speaker, Dr. Wijma, we learned that we have to address stress and consider it in the future when we try to develop the MCH handbook. Arigato gozaimasu, muchas gracias, tashkur, kupchay laylay, thank you well, maraming salamat po.
Well, thank you very much for this overview of all the learnings. And I agree with you. Even in a 2-hour seminar, we can learn a lot from each other, and a lot of relevant information and experiences are exchanged. So that is very, very, very nice, actually. Thank you very much. There are still questions in the Q&A. So what we will do is share the questions with the panelists later. So we hope that in that way, your questions will be answered later on. And then to finalize, actually, Anneke, you would like to give some information about the next webinar and some practical information.
Yes, exactly. Now, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for the beautiful summary, the very informative keynote speech. Also, thanks to all the presenters, and of course, Her Imperial Highness Crown Princess Akishino for her words. The next webinar of our MCH handbook will be on the 23rd of September. And you are automatically subscribed already, so you get a link for the next webinar when you don't do anything. So please join us again. We hope to see you there. And please fill in also the evaluation. We will put the link in the chat and in the Q&A. So then you can fill in the evaluation, and you get also a certificate for attending this webinar. And I think that's really great. The next webinar will be with the theme of the digital MCH handbook, and different countries of the world will present their digitized MCH handbook, and we can have a discussion from what's the best way, online or offline or both. So please come again. And when we put on the link in the sheet and we say you bye-bye, we will finish like we start today with the video clip about how it is with toxic stress. But also there are always ways, both big and small, to foster resilience. So see you next time, and thank you for coming in the webinar.
Yeah, once again, thank you very much, and good evening or good night, and have a nice day still in actually Latin America.
We all want to react. And understanding how stress affects us can empower us to make change in our lives. There are things we can do to buffer ourselves and our children against the effects of even the most intense stress. Just as redistributing cargo from an overloaded truck can help it run again, supports and services, things like food pantries, job training programs, or even just talking with someone who cares, can help us focus on caring for ourselves and our children. And just as regular maintenance is required to keep a truck running, reliable access to community services can help us manage the load during challenging times. Reaching out to get support can be difficult. But things that might seem very small, like sitting and breathing deeply, playing I Spy with your child, or even sharing a walk or a snuggle, can make a difference. Over time, these small steps can build our resilience and our children's by strengthening the skills and relationships that help us cope. And our communities can build resilience too by providing services and opportunities that help all families thrive. Supports like these help build a strong foundation for developing brain architecture. So the earlier we can provide them, the better. But the brain is capable of change throughout life, and it's never too late for a tune-up. Coping with and healing from toxic stress takes a lot of effort and support. But we all need the help of others in difficult times. And building resilience and strength in our families and communities is one of the most important investments we can make as a society. In the end, it will help all of us become the parents that we want to be.